The new F1 movie is pulling people into the racing world. The speed, the drama, if that captured your attention, you're in the right place. Welcome to On Track with Noe. Well, hey everyone, again, welcome to On Track with Noe, and super excited to start this podcast. We're going to talk about IndyCar, NASCAR, Formula One. If it has wheels and races, we'll probably end up talking about it at some time or another, but we'll have new episodes hopefully every week with some stories, some hot takes, maybe some interviews in the future. That would be fantastic. But today, we're going to talk about racing and movies. Why do racing movies matter? And we're also going to do a little review of the F1 movie and share about how a certain movie made me a racing fan about 20-something years ago. So it's been a while. And we'll also list some must-see racing movies that you have to see. So it's going to be fun. But we'll start off with what is currently happening right now in the cinema world, and that is the F1 movie. Came out a few weeks ago and got to go see it in IMAX, and I would recommend that you go watch it in IMAX. It is fantastic. If you've got a 4DX theater near you, if you're brave enough, go for it. I would probably get motion sickness, so I don't know if I could do that. But seeing it in IMAX was really good. But yeah, we're going to talk about the F1 movie, the big stars, the big budget, all that hype and everything. But did it actually capture what racing feels like? So, Miguel, our producer, you've seen the F1 movie. What were your thoughts on it?
I have, and as an F1 fan and a cinematographer, someone that knows how the industry works, I will say this. If you haven't seen it, leave your rulebook at home. But as a cinematic type of film, it was amazing. It was made by the same people that made Top Gun, and I don't know anything about jets, but that almost made me want to enlist, so...
Man... So did this F1 movie make you want to be an F1 driver now?
Well, I've done the Porsche track experience at Barber Museum, and so I do have some experience behind the wheel. But yeah, I mean, just watching like the onboards and just the angles, the cameras, and looking at behind the scenes, the extra technology, and they actually came up with like new, not necessarily a new camera, but they took out internals from iPhones and Sony sensors to be able to put them into the cars. And the reason why they use an F2 car instead of an F1 car is, A, it was cheaper.
Yeah, that's important when making a movie.
Cheaper, and since it's smaller, they made it look like an F1 car, you know, the size and everything. But since it's smaller, they have more areas to put in camera batteries, the camera systems, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't remember, but I think it's got like maybe 4 or 5 different cameras in there.
Wow.
Yeah. And I know like for broadcasting and everything, you know, they do have cameras, but the difference is this movie was shot for IMAX.
Yes.
And you don't get that IMAX quality from actual broadcast cameras that they have in the actual F1 cars.
Yeah.
So, but like technically wise, technology wise, just everything camera wise, cinematography, it is 10 out of 10 pretty much.
I agree with that. I mean, when you look at the movie and just the cinematography, like you said, it makes you feel like you are in the race. It, like if you watch it in IMAX, like it roars, it's almost like you're in the race, and they did such a great job capturing that. I think that's one of probably the top thing that this movie did right was the cinematography and just making you feel like you're a part of it and capturing that speed, because that may be hard to capture sometimes, but they did a phenomenal job. But I really enjoyed it. I'm kind of a fairly new F1 fan, been watching since about 2022. So don't know everything, but it was a fun watch. I really enjoyed it. I walked out of there, I was like, man, I really enjoyed that movie. But for those of you who have not watched it, let me give you a quick little summary, spoiler free, because I know that's very important. So basically, a retired driver returns to help a struggling F1 team and also to mentor a young rising star. And so this movie, I mean, it did a phenomenal job with the storytelling, I thought. Obviously, there's with any movie, there's you have the Hollywood kind of Hollywoodification. I just made up that word, but we're gonna go with it of Formula One. Um, where yeah, you probably wouldn't have a 50-year-old driver now. Fernando Alonso, I mean, in a few years he may be he may be that, but
He's still a rookie.
yeah, he's just getting started. He's still looking for that third championship, but no, it was fantastic. And even the crashes I thought were very realistic, and a lot of the crashes were actually based off of real Formula One crashes. Without spoiling it, there's one that used a lot of archival footage, which was fantastic, and how they used that to tell the story and to build the story of this retired driver, which by the way is played by Brad Pitt. I mean, who is not a fan of? I mean, who isn't a fan of Brad Pitt? I mean, that was he did a fantastic job with the acting. I think the acting was also fantastic. And again, they filmed a lot of this movie, especially the racing scenes. They were filmed during an F1 weekend, and so like there was actual competition going on, and I think that's really cool that Formula One let them pretty much have free reign and be on the track. I know Silverstone, like you were saying, Miguel, they got those F2 cars to line up on the grid behind all the F1 cars for Silverstone one year. But it's interesting. Something you said really caught my attention. With it's basically like Drive to Survive meets Top Gun, and like you said, just I love Top Gun, Top Gun Maverick. Those are fantastic movies. So this movie, like same filmmakers, I think they did a phenomenal job. And like I said, if you haven't watched it, you need to watch it. But again, some of the things that this movie got right was just the footage on track. We've already talked about that. I think this movie also did a fantastic job of capturing the team dynamics and really the pressure and the tension that goes on during an F1 weekend and during a race weekend. Like there is pressure to perform. There's pressure from sponsors. There's pressure from investors. And so if you don't do good, like you could lose sponsors, you could lose investors, and then your team, isn't going to do as well. So I think this movie did a fantastic job of capturing that tension and the team dynamics. I think it's also a great introduction to someone who has never watched a race of any kind. When I went to go watch the movie, I saw a lot of people that maybe they weren't race fans. They weren't necessarily, they didn't have the F1 like clothes or like the t-shirts or anything like that. But there was a lot of, people there. And I think this is a great introduction for them to get into racing. And again, we've already talked about the visuals, the cinematography. I think the sound also, the way they captured it, like I said, it just makes you feel like you're a part of it. So that's some of the things that the movie got right, but there's also some things that felt off. But of course, it is Hollywood, so it's not all going to be super realistic and everything. There were some race moments that were like, that would get you a ban in Formula One, or that would get you some penalty points, or makes you kind of wonder like, how did Sonny Hayes get a super license? And then it's like, well, if he's racing, he may have gotten enough points through other racing series. But to be honest, that stuff, like, I wasn't bothered by it. I think it added, I really enjoyed it, and it added a lot to it. Again, we're not watching a movie for a rule book lesson. We're watching it for the roar of the engine. We're watching it for the drama. We're watching it for the visuals. And so I think if you go into the mindset going into this movie, with that mindset of it's not going to be 100% accurate, no racing movie is 100% accurate, then I think you're going to really enjoy it. And I think this movie is going to really impact motorsports, not just in America, but all over the world. It is going to bring new fans into racing. And I even think not just into Formula One, but you're going to have people that's going to be interested in NASCAR and IndyCar. And we'll talk about that in future episodes because I do want to touch on those racing series. And I've seen so many people talk about it on social media, people that aren't really racing fans, but they're like, I want to go see this movie because I've heard people talk about it and how awesome it is. maybe for no other reason, people are going to go watch this movie because, oh, these are the same people that made Top Gun Maverick. So, hey, if it brings more eyes to the sport, I think it's a win-win, you know. And you may have people asking after the movie, like, hey, this is really cool. Like, I actually want to go to a race now. Where can I watch a race? And this is an opportunity for us race fans to go ahead and to welcome these newcomers into the racing world. Because I don't, there's a lot of interesting takes on like Drive to Survive and whether, there's a lot of debate on fans that become fans of racing Formula One because of Drive to Survive and those who have watched it for 20 or 30 years. And I'm of the opinion that, hey, it doesn't matter how you got into racing, what made you fall in love with racing. As long as you're here, we're glad to have you. That's kind of my train of thought and everything. Um, and so this actually reminds me of how I got started into racing, how I became obsessed with racing. And it was actually a movie that got me into racing. So when I was 10 years old, and I grew up a Disney kid, so I would always watch all the Disney movies when they would come out. But when I was 10 years old, there was this new Pixar movie that was called Cars. And I remember seeing all the commercials on TV, and I was like, I have to go watch this in theaters. And so I remember that was actually the first movie that I went to go watch in theaters. And I remember going into the theater and just sitting down. The theater got dark. You have the little Disney intro that comes up, and it's pitch black, and you hear the words, Speed. I am Speed. And then you have the race car zooming across the screen. That right there was the moment that turned me on. I was like, that is the moment I became a racing fan. And I just love that movie. It's still my favorite movie of all time just because of the impact it had on me. I don't think I would be a racing fan had I not watched Cars. And to see, later as I grew in my racing journey and as a fan, it's so fun to look back on that movie and see like some of the real life drivers that were in that movie, like Darren Hart Jr., Mario Andretti, Richard Petty, the King. So that was a lot of fun, and it really sparked a love, obviously, for NASCAR because that's what Cars, is really most closely related. But eventually, I started branching out into other motorsports and watching those series. So Cars had a huge impact on me, and that movie was a huge milestone for my life. And so that was a lot of fun right there. So, and there's a ton of movies out there. Some of the movies, I mean, there's so many documentaries. I'm a documentary person, but like there's so many movies that are amazing. Days of Thunder. If you have not watched that movie, it was made in 1990. It's basically a NASCAR movie, but it is awesome. It's actually on YouTube right now. You can watch it for free. You don't have to pay anything. So if you have not watched Days of Thunder, you need to go and check that one out. It's a 90s NASCAR drama. It is amazing. There's a lot of memorable quotes there and a lot of memorable moments. Again, I mentioned earlier, Drive to Survive. That's a great way to get introduced into Formula One and get to know who the characters are, get to know who the drivers are, the team principals. If you do not know who Gunther Steiner is, let me tell you, you're going to love Gunther Steiner by the time you finish watching Drive to Survive. And this is a great way, honestly, to get, introduced into the series. If you're looking for more of a documentary route, I would recommend Senna. That's a Formula One documentary on the life of Formula One champion, multiple time champion, Ayrton Senna. And it is very powerful. You get to learn a lot about his personal life, but also obviously the racing aspect of it. Maybe a documentary is not for you, but there is a series on Netflix that's kind of like a documentary, but it's like got actors and everything, and it's actually really good. It's like 4 or 5 episodes, but that's a really good documentary that you can also watch on Netflix. Rush. Rush is an incredible movie, racing movie, based on a true event from the 1970s in Formula One. You have Niki Lauda and James Hunt and their rivalry in the, I believe it's 1976 season where they're going at it for the championship, and one of the drivers has a moment that they have to overcome, and it's really inspiring, and it's a really good movie. Ron Howard directed it, um, so and yeah, that's a great movie. Ford versus Ferrari, um, another classic movie that showcases a rivalry and emotion. Matt Damon, I believe, is the star of that, and he does a fantastic job. That's a good movie too to watch. Um, but maybe here's a few that you you know, haven't thought of or don't know about. One recently came out was Gran Turismo, based on a true event. And that one's fun because you have like a sim racer who becomes a real race car driver. Um, I enjoyed that movie. There was some criticism about it, and I don't think it was well received too much, but I actually really enjoyed it a lot. Um, Going back to the documentary, there's a new documentary on Prime called Earnhardt. It's 4 episodes, and it's basically the entire life story of Dale Earnhardt Sr., one of the greatest NASCAR drivers in all of history. Won 7 championships, won 76 races. If you've seen a black number 3, that's where it comes from, Dale Earnhardt. And it's a series that just came out a few months ago. So if you haven't checked it out, check it out. It is incredibly powerful. You get to learn more about Dale and his life. And here's the funny one. Maybe a lot of you haven't heard about this one, but Stroker Ace. Stroker Ace, 1983, I believe is when it was made. It features Burt Reynolds and Jim Nabors, and it is a funny video. If anything else, it's just a good time. You're going to laugh so much. So if you haven't checked out Stroker Ace, check it out. It's a good movie. There are some things, obviously, it's a little bit dated because it was made in the 80s, but it is a fun watch, and so it's fantastic. Miguel, are there any of those movies that stand out to you? Or maybe some other movie that we didn't mention?
No, no. I really did enjoy Ford versus Ferrari. Just the the racing aspect. Like I'm a cinematographer, so I do know a lot about like camera work and like what cameras are used for what lenses, all that stuff. And Ford versus Ferrari was actually one of those like rare movies where they don't do too much CGI. They actually mounted cameras onto
Mm-hmm.
the cars and did some real racing. And so I just love the aspect of putting two of my favorite worlds, racing and filmmaking, like into one, and just how fun it is, or how cool
Yeah.
it is seeing movies like that be made. And then I mean the acting was just phenomenal. And but yeah, Ford versus Ferrari, really good one. Same as Rush, I really did like the acting in that as well. And like the wrecks and everything, it's pretty accurate. I know they used a little bit more CGI in that movie,
Mm-hmm.
but but yeah, I mean those are some really good films. And those are films I recommend to people that are into racing, or people that are just wanting to see a good film.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, the cinematography, I think just that itself would be a good reason to watch those movies and everything. But a few days ago, I actually posted on social media, and you can follow me on Track with Noe on Instagram, X, TikTok. So you can be on the lookout, and I'd love for you to participate because then we can get fans to share some of their favorite movies. On Instagram, Caitlin said one of her favorite movies, racing related, is Days of Thunder. Again, a great movie. Tom Cruise is in it. I actually heard that they're in the process of making Days of Thunder 2. So that may be a movie that comes out in the future. Um, I think people would give me also a hard time now that I think about it if I didn't mention Talladega Nights. And while that is a wild movie in itself, and I think it's I think it really uh, went into the NASCAR stereotypes of what people think NASCAR is and everything. But again, if you're looking for a good laugh, if you've never seen Talladega Nights, you need to watch it. It is hilarious. So, but yeah, so that's a lot. Obviously with movies and everything, movies and racing. I think that's the best of both of our worlds because I too kind of have a filming background, cinematography background. So I like to look at some of the details. I also love to see like the behind the scenes stuff, like how did they make these movies and everything. So, um, but yeah, if you haven't, check out the F1 movie. Check out some of the movies on this list that we gave you. Or maybe, hey, chime in on social media. Let us know a movie that we maybe missed. I can't believe I almost missed talking about Talladega Nights. I know y'all would have given me a hard time about that, but yeah. So this has been incredible, and we look forward to another episode. We're actually going to dive into some of these racing series and talk about some Racing 101. So if you're a new fan, stick around because we'll give you some tips and we'll give you some knowledge so that way you can enjoy racing a whole lot better. But yeah, episode 1 in the books, racing movies. We'll see you next time for On Track with Noe.